Hi, this is Cynthia Covey Haller, and you're listening to Awakened Nation podcast with Brad Zollis.
A huge shift is taking place on planet Earth. People seem to be waking up. Tired of the way things used to be, they are creating something brand new and changing the world we live in. My name is Brad Zollis, and I get to sit down with the next generation of idea makers, the disruptors, and the game changers. Everyday people, just like you and me, from all over, who are doing amazing things. Welcome to Awakened Nation.
Hey, everybody. I have Cynthia Covey Haller on today, and her new book, it's actually her dad's book. They did all the research and the work and the writing and the hard work that goes into bringing this last book of Stephen Covey to life. And I love the title, Live Life in Crescendo. The most important work is always ahead of you. Cynthia, welcome to the show.
Thanks so much for inviting me to be on, Brad. I appreciate it.
Absolutely. I love everything about this book and what it means, because a lot of times I have authors on the show and it's business. Everybody's using the book for business. How can we crush it in the business world? This book is about life. And it goes, your father set up the 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, one of the most popular books, business books ever created. And this is, you talk about this in the book, this he felt like was the next most important work of his life. Do you want to talk about that a little bit?
Yes. I feel like it's the capstone to the 7 Habits. That my father would be bothered because people would say to him, "Hey, Stephen, how much longer are you going to keep working? Aren't you? You're kind of getting up there. You're in your 70s, and you're going to slow down at all." And he felt like, why should I? I feel like I'm still relevant. I've got passion for what I do. I feel like I want to make a difference. And I feel like my most important work is still ahead. In fact, This book came about because I foolishly asked him one day, are you going to write anything like the 7 Habits? And he said, geez, I wrote that in 1989. That may be my greatest work. I'm not ready to say that yet. I'm working on 6 or 7 books at the same time. And I'm passionate about my personal mission statement, which was Live Life in Crescendo. And so he basically asked me to take this book. He was so busy. He said, you can interview me and I'll talk to you about these ideas, but you write about living in crescendo and find examples of people who did that.
Yeah. That's incredible. I love that attitude because I have a lot of friends, I'm not going to say how old, but they're preparing for death. And I am not living life that way. This podcast is my second act, and I'm just enjoying it. And I feel you just keep going and going and going.
I love the name of your podcast, Awakened Nation, deeper conversations and important, extraordinary things. That's living in crescendo.
Thank you. Yeah. I specialize, believe it or not, in naming corporations and coming up with these ideas. And this was the fastest I've ever named something. It was because it was close to my heart. And I think I'm just going to ask you this. You start out the book in the beginning, you talk about so your father is close to your heart, your brothers, you, everybody. You talk about this 12th birthday, and it really tells us the extraordinary integrity of not only your father, but what he stood for. Like when he made a promise, he stuck to that promise. Let's go into that a little bit because I'm so impressed with that story.
That's great. Well, I'm the oldest of 9 children, and I'm called the mother hen in our family now that our parents are gone. So I'm the mother hen.
Right.
My parents were amazing people and created a wonderful childhood for us, but they weren't perfect. They were normal parents and they struggled like everyone else. But I think the difference was I never saw 2 people. Now that I'm a parent and grandmother, I've never seen parents try harder to get it right and to apologize if things went wrong and to take ownership of it and keep trying. And that was important to me, and a good example to me as I raised my kids. But the story you're talking about reflected so much in my life when I look back on it. Mm-hmm. And it was when my dad invited me to go to San Francisco with me on a business trip. And he had the habit of doing this. He would take, I'm the oldest, so I was the first one to do this, but he would take different kids on like a private date, which you can imagine would be so fun. Yeah. And half the fun is planning it ahead of time, talking about it, anticipating it, looking forward to it together. And we did that for a few months. And we had it all charted out. I was going to just play around the hotel while he spoke. He said, "Oh, you've heard me. You don't want to hear me again. Just go do something fun and swim or something." And so I was going to meet him at the back of the room when he was finished. And then we would take off as fast as we could before people caught him. We were going to ride the famous trolley cars. He really built up these trolley cars and how magical they were and how they'd go all over the city up and down these steep hills. And I just couldn't imagine as a 12-year-old what this was going to be like. I was so excited. And then we would go, after we'd ride the trolley cars, we were going to go shop in some of the department stores. He was going to buy me an outfit for school. Then we would take a cab to get our favorite food, Chinese, in Chinatown. And we'd plan that. And then we'd race back to the hotel just before they closed the pool to make it so we could swim a little bit. Then we would go up to the room and order room service and watch a movie at the end of the night. So this was so exciting, and we had every minute planned, and it was going according to plan. I was at the back of the room waiting for him when tragedy struck, and he ran into an old friend, a college friend that he hadn't seen for 10 years. And they embraced, and they were so excited to see each other. And I heard the guy say, "Hey, Stephen, I came to this conference because I knew you were in San Francisco. I knew you were here. My wife and I would love you to come down to meet tonight. We could eat at the wharf and catch up on old times and have some seafood." And oh my gosh, I just panicked. I could see my trolley car going down the hill without me. And I hated seafood, wanted Chinese food with my dad. I didn't want to spend the night with some old person I didn't know, because the guy said, my dad said, "Oh, my daughter's here with us." And he said, "Oh, she's welcome to join us." And I thought, oh, what a nightmare. And so anyway, I just expected the worst. I saw my dad put his arm around his friend and say, "Bob, I would love to do that. That sounds like so much fun, but not tonight. Cynthia and I have a special date planned, don't we, honey?" And he winked at me and grabbed my hand, and we were out the door. I could see my trolley car emerge again. And I was kind of choked up when I got outside and said, "But Dad, this is your good friend. I know you haven't seen him forever, and wouldn't you rather spend time with him tonight?" And he said, "Are you kidding me? I wouldn't miss this for anything. And you'd much rather have Chinese food, wouldn't you? Let's go catch that trolley car." Looking back on my childhood, it's just a small encounter, just one little situation that happened. But the way my father handled it showed me so much about integrity, about putting first things first, about priorities, about making sure he had made the right deposits, like in his 7 Habits, and that I was the important thing that night, and his friend could wait. And it taught me so many important lessons that, looking back on my childhood, that one really stands out to me, and is something I treasure.
I love that you launched the book with that story, because plain and simply, we all deal with our parents, and understanding, oh, wait, my dad did that too, or my mom did this, or any tiny little thing to not only make you feel special, but to elevate you into the world of adults a little bit, and for your father to enter your world as well. And I just think that is an incredibly special moment in the book. And let's move on. I took so many notes. I got all these notes here for today. The book is divided into 4 parts. This whole idea that life builds and builds and builds in crescendo. And the first is midlife struggle. Then comes the pinnacle of success. Third is life-changing setbacks. We all got knocked on our, our little tuchus or booty. And then the second half of life, So let's break those down. Let's talk a little bit about that, because midlife struggle, that's where you're trying to define yourself, right?
Right. You're just to get the definitions right, Brad. You said you're musical, so you understand this. But our family, besides my mom, who has a beautiful singing voice, my dad really wasn't. His voice was awful. He loved music and he appreciated it. But as you know, if you've been to a concert or you're in music, you know what a crescendo is. Yeah. It builds in power and energy and intensity, and it grows stronger and not only louder, but more powerful. And if you're in at a concert, it just fills the arena. It's amazing to hear. And the opposite of crescendo is diminuendo, which is, that music slows and it fades and it eventually comes to an end. And so the challenge in this book and my father's personal mission statement, the last 10 years of his life, to live life in crescendo, just means that in every age and stage that you're in, and regardless of circumstances and setbacks and whatever you're encountering, you have a choice to live in crescendo or in diminuendo. And you have to consciously choose that. And you're talking about midlife. A lot of times people, that's the first stage I talked about. A lot of times people wake up and they're 60 or something, and they think, oh my gosh, I'm not that successful, or I'm not famous. I haven't made a lot of money, or what have I done with my life? And sometimes they panic and do things that we say the midlife crisis, where they kind of flip out. Right. But what great things, one example I'm thinking of is a man who was started a business, construction business, and was eventually kicked out by his partners. Somehow he found himself out of a job at 47 years old with 4 kids. Mm-hmm. And didn't know what he was going to do, had no profession. He's having a midlife crisis, and he has a choice right here to live in crescendo or diminuendo. He chooses, he says, well, you know what? I'm going to start a second career. And he applied for law school. Well, he's 47. He's the oldest person in his law class by double. And he said one morning he pulled into the parking lot at the law school at 5 a.m. The bleak of winter. It's freezing cold and pitch black, and he felt gloom and doom just come over him, and he thought, what have I done? I'm 47, I'll be 48 soon, and I'm just starting law school, and I don't know if I can do it. And he just felt almost paralyzed, and he decided to fight through his fears and think, I'm looking ahead. I'm not going to look in what my dad called the rear view mirror. And that is, he said, for an example, just a little side note, if you're driving a car, that if you're always looking in the rear view mirror, you're looking back at what you left, or you're looking over your shoulder, how far are you going to get? In your car, you're going to end up in a ditch. But the idea of when you're driving, you look ahead, you look forward. And so he determined, this man, that he was not going to look in his rear view mirror and give in to his fears and proceed with his plan. And he used his resources, his what my father calls resourcefulness and initiative, his R&I, dug down deep and went year-round, graduated from law school in 2.5 years, and set up a profession at almost 50, a brand new career at almost 50 years old, and had more work within a year than he could handle. So, we have choices. We have to decide. If you're in this midlife stage, maybe you've gone through a divorce, maybe you feel like you're estranged from your children and don't have relationships with them. Maybe your business is a failure. You have a choice right then. How are you going to choose to live in crescendo or diminuendo and proceed so that you can, the subtitle of the book is, your most important work is always ahead of you. Great work and contributions still lie ahead.
I love that. It's funny. I feel like we're in a day and age where, mental health right now is being brought out into the forefront and people are taking care of themselves. But I feel like, and from your story and your book and your work, a lot of people compare themselves to what's going on around them and outside themselves, and then basing their feelings about themselves on that, instead of going within and saying, okay, that's a negative no. Let's get this out of the way. What's truth here? And how can I redefine myself? Let's talk about that a little bit, because I feel like we compare ourselves too much to other people. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, my father was really felt like that was so damaging, to measure yourself against another person, because we all are unique. We all have unique gifts. And he believed that each of us had greatness and potential within. And to compare yourself to someone else, you'll always find people that are lesser or greater than yourself. So the comparison mentality, he called it abundance and scarcity. He said, you know, there's enough for everyone in the world. There's enough resources. There's enough wonderful things to accomplish. And so he always felt like like Viktor Frankl, a person that he really admired, that we've got to detect. He said, Frankl said, we don't invent our missions, we detect them within ourselves, which I think is amazing to hear, that we detect what we are good at and what we can do by listening to our conscience, by being introspective, by getting feedback from other people, by analyzing what am I good at and what can I really contribute, and taking that and applying it to our life personally. And regardless, my father never liked blame. We talked about R&I, resourcefulness and initiative. As kids, we just hated when he said, use your R&I. we couldn't blame anybody. We had to take responsibility for ourselves. If we came home from school and said, I'm flunking math, I hate my teacher, he's awful, he'd say, use your R&I, make it happen. What does that have to do with it? We're like, right. No, my dad, this teacher's really bad. Use your R&I, make it happen. And that meant change teachers, get a tutor, talk to him, do what you can to supplement your education. You can't blame your teacher. You're responsible for your education. And we, you know, as a child, as a teenager, you didn't want to hear that. You wanted to blame your dumb math teacher. And we always joked that we had a great childhood with our parents, because our dad always made us take responsibility for ourselves, but our mom sometimes let us blame other people.
That's mom.
And would take our side. And so if you wanted the truth, if you wanted your heart massaged, you went to your mom. And if you wanted the truth, you went to your dad.
That's funny. You touched on something I actually wrote down. I wanted to ask about crafting a mission statement. And for myself, I never thought of it this way, but I kind of reverse engineered my own mission statement, which is to ignite game-changing conversations. That's my mission statement here on Earth. Now, there's going to be more to it as I craft it more, but I thought you just said what I couldn't figure out because I'm inside my own head. But let's talk about a mission statement. Do you feel people should craft their own mission statement or try to? Because it creates an extraordinary impetus as to why you do stuff. And do you have a mission statement?
Yes. My father always taught, and he got this from either Abraham Lincoln or Tom Peters.
I love Tom. Yeah.
The best way to predict your future is to create it. And that means figure out, okay, where do I want to be? It's kind of like begin with the end in mind too. Where do I want to be down the road? And how can I get there? And so take your own unique situation and, figure out, okay, where do I want to be in 10 years, in 15 years? My father would sometimes have people talk about their funeral, what they wanted to have said about themselves at the funeral. And, you can't take anything. It's shocking when you go to a funeral and you realize just the person alone is in the casket. There's no titles, there's no money, there's no prestige. You just take whatever you can with you. But he defined success to him. Success was to be successful was to be successful in your most important roles in life. And so he would encourage people to write a mission statement about your most important roles. beginning maybe with your family. You're a father, you're a mother, you're a brother, you're a son, you're an aunt. Wherever you are in your family, what is the most important thing to you? And then to take those roles, those most important roles, and set goals around them. And the goals would be that, that would help you create your own mission statement. Our family mission statement was a really long one, but that we took months to create. But I don't know. I think it's really personal about your own mission statements, but everybody has unique gifts and talents that they think aren't as special, but they really are. They have more than they believe that they have to be able to create a wonderful life for themselves. I just wanted to use an example. I don't know if you read in the book to really illustrate the idea of living in crescendo versus diminuendo, Brad. If you were familiar with that story about Anthony Ray Hinton in the book, and this is an example of someone who eventually found his life, found his mission after decades, and is making great contributions now. But Ray Hinton was a man in 1989 in Alabama that was accused of killing two people that he had nothing to do with. He was actually in a lockdown work facility 15 miles away from the crime, but he lived in a racially motivated area that accused him of these crimes and basically pinned it on him because they didn't have anyone else to answer for this. And he went to the trial knowing he was completely innocent and believed he would be acquitted, and found himself, to his horror, literally not only in prison, but on death row in Alabama. And he was devastated and so angry that this had happened to him in the middle of his life when he's in his late 20s, that he threw his Bible underneath his bed and determined, if they believe that about me, I'm done. I'm just going to shut down. And for the next 3 years, he literally did not speak to anyone, any of the prisoners, the fellow prisoners on death row, none of the guards, anyone except for family and friends that came to visit him privately. For 3 years, he was miserable and was mute, didn't speak. And as you can imagine, his circle of influence and his power, he was living in diminuendo. He was shutting down. He was almost like he was dead. And he said one night at 2 or 3 in the morning, he was awakened by the crying of an inmate next to him, in the cell next to him, he had never spoken to and never met, who was just sobbing and begging someone to help him with his pain. And something awoke in Ray that he had suppressed this compassion and this part of his personality, and it awoke in him. And he was amazed to realize, I am on death row and I can't do anything about that right now, but I do have choices. Love is a choice. Compassion is a choice, just as despair and hate has been these last 3 years. And he broke his silence and comforted this man who was a complete stranger who had just found out that his mother had passed away and was so devastated. He spent the night talking to this man and giving him the hope to hang on, and got him laughing and talking about memories of his mother and how she had been a wonderful influence in this person's life. And it got him thinking to renew his own hope and faith that he too one day would be found innocent and to be the good person that his mother had raised him to be. And he got under his bed and dug out his Bible again and determined that he was going to choose compassion and hope and life instead of the hate and despair that he had embraced. And so for the next, you can imagine, 27 years, I mean, this is just incredible. His influence with the guards and with his kindness, he started a book club in prison to help transport these prisoners out of their circumstances and into other arenas, because of it's so desperate in prison like that, on death row. Yeah. And he attracted the attention of Brian Stevenson, who is the Just Mercy author. And he established Equal Justice Initiative. And he eventually had him, pilled it. And after 27 years, he literally was released, being one of the longest condemned men on death row to ever be found innocent and released. And as Ray walked out to his family and friends, he called out, "The sun does shine." And that became a best-selling book. 3 years later, he wrote a New York Times best-selling book called The Sun Does Shine, talking about his journey on death row and how he found a way to not only survive, but to live on death row and thrive. And now his greatest work is ahead of him. He said, "They took my 30s, my 40s, and my 50s, but what they couldn't take was my joy." And so he has a great mission. Now, today, Ray Hinton is involved with Brian Stevenson, helping others who are justly imprisoned. He's an advocate. He's a spokesman. He's a representative. His life is living in crescendo. He's expanding, even though he had decades of imprisonment, and his most important work and contributions are still to come.
That is incredible. And ladies and gentlemen, if you're listening, sometimes we find our mission, our calling, our purpose in just this simple, contribution that we have within our own nature. Our own power is right there. And a lot of times, Cynthia, I've found those things, we can diminish them. We can just kind of say, that's just something I do. And I'll tell you a quick story. I remember one Christmas I was in New York City and I had to work like right up until Christmas Eve. And we had a Kinko's across the street from my studio. And I went over there and they said, "Hey, we'll have your job ready in an hour and a half." They were printing out, colored copies that I needed. So I'm standing there when I went to pick up the job, and there were these two women there and another one behind the counter. And I just started cracking jokes. It's my nature to be funny. That was a survival tool I had growing up. And after they laughed for a minute, I'm about to leave with the job. And it got real silent all of a sudden. And I looked up and one of the girls leaned into me and she said, "I want to thank you for making us laugh. That is such a powerful gift, especially around the holidays." And, I really needed that. And I was blown away, Cynthia. I was literally like, this is just something I do. This is just, and the reason I'm telling this is not to put the spotlight on me, but to let everyone know your gift, your, contribution to life could be the most simplest thing of being good with children. Maybe you're an artist who does caricatures, or maybe you're just a father who likes to coach Little League. Who knows? That contribution could be really, really simple. Have you found that to be true?
I love that. Brad, you never know what difference you can make in someone's life. Just a smile, a kind word, thinking of them. You might think of someone in your neighborhood or in your family that has an addiction or that is really struggling and that needs a mentor. And what a powerful example, what a wonderful thing that could be with you, who you have these unique gifts that you think, oh, maybe they're not so special. But to someone else, it literally could be an answer to their prayers. It could be an answer to the struggles and finding somebody that you can really help. My father had a unique definition of leadership. He said, leadership is communicating another's worth and potential so clearly that they are inspired to see it in themselves. I love that. Boom. Communicating worth and potential so clearly to another person that they can actually see it. And he often would ask people, how many of you, in his presentations, it'd say, by the raise of hands, how many of you are at the level of success you are at right now because someone believed in you when you didn't believe in yourself? And he would say anywhere from a half to 2/3 of the people would raise their hand. And you could probably think of someone yourself, Brad, in your life who believed in you when maybe you didn't yet. And my father certainly did. He had an opportunity, a service opportunity overseas that he was at for a couple of years. And his leader saw in him something that he didn't see, his ability to communicate ideas. And he had him present and train older people twice his age and travel around and do this as a 20-year-old. And he couldn't see it, but his leader said, I know you can do this. I believe in you. And eventually, as he acted upon it, he saw, I do kind of have that strength. I love it. And I do like to communicate. And I feel like I can inspire people. My father was going to go home. He went home and went to Harvard University, got an MBA, and the family plan was he was going to go into the family hotel business. It was called Little America in Salt Lake City. It began in Wyoming. And that was his plan. And because of this leader and him bringing out this potential in him, he went into what he is doing now. He went into teaching and writing, and he would never have influenced the literally millions of people through 7 Habits and through the other 7 or 8 books had he, stuck with the original plan. But he found his gift. He found his voice, as he says in the 8th Habit. Find your voice and help others find theirs.
I've always felt that my talent was seeing the potential in another person. So a lot of times it's something that they can't see in themselves.
And that's a great ability.
And I didn't know I had it till I was I founded a company back in the 90s that eventually went public. So I became a C-level executive. And I would see people being interviewed and I'd say, oh, this person would be a great communicator, or this person. But here was a lot of people, 9 out of 10 times, they were like, really? Okay, I'll do it. And then they stepped into what they were really good at, that we could all see. All my business partners could see it. But every once in a while, you'd have 1 or 2 people out of 10 who were like, what are you talking about? I'm not that. And you could clearly see that they were capable of that role, but they couldn't see it in themselves.
Yeah,
I just find that extraordinary. Have you met people like that who just they're like, come on, I'm not that. Yeah, well, what do you do with that?
Well, like I say, I think it's important to actually initiate this. Find people that think about people in your family, in the neighborhood, in your community, people that you can see are struggling, and help them see the potential in themselves, bring out that greatness. I tell a story in the book about a young intern that went to work for a CEO. He just really was so fortunate that he showed a little initiative when he met him, and the CEO hired him to be his intern. Well, what do most interns do? File papers, run, go for this, go for that. They're kind of in the background. Well, this old CEO of a huge regional bank told him, you're not going to be that kind of intern. You're going to learn how to run a multi-million-dollar company, and you're going to be my right-hand man. And he took him everywhere. He would meet important people in the city, and he said that he would say to them, oh, you've got to meet my new intern. He said, like I was a big deal. Yeah. And he said, he molded me. He would help me. He would talk about when he would have important people in and then make big decisions. He would let him sit in on the conversation. Yep. And then he would talk to him after and say, did you notice how he did that? Did you see that leadership technique? And did you understand what's happening here? Then he would give him assignments to speak to his board. He was a 22-year-old intern who was like a sophomore, and he would have to give presentations to his board. Well, you can imagine what that would do with him. He was petrified, but it brought out the best in him. He says, I know you can do it. I want you to present to this board. They're in their 50s, 60s, and they're very educated, smart business people. And this intern is giving his idea on a presentation. And he said, it instilled in me, he believed in me so much that I saw, well, maybe I do have some abilities here. And he said it also inspired him that one day I'm going to do this for someone else. And so whatever walk of life you're in business, or if you're at home, if you deal with people in schools or in the community, if you feel like you can lift someone, like you're saying, Brad, that you have a gift to see the potential and greatness in another person and bring that out. What a life you could change, or dozens of lives you could change through a little effort on your part, and what a joy that would bring to your own life.
I remember that story in the book. He said, he'd say, sit down, relax, and then he's like, what's going on? And these people would come in, and he valued his input at some point, which I thought was great. I recommend that everybody make a list of the people that have just been there and believed in you through the years. I did that many, many times. And, I put Ms. Rhodes in my first book, Liquid Leadership, because she was my fourth grade teacher. And she was the very first person to really, really show that she believed in me. And then in college, I met Mr. Cochran and a bunch of other people. But one of the most powerful business influences I ever had was my boss at this company called Vogart Crafts, Glenn Nicholson. I was a young, art director, and he would pull me into these meetings. He's our CEO. And he would just have a conversation with me, and he'd say, Brad, what do you think about this? What do you think about that? And I remember working with him, and then eventually I left the company and we lost touch with each other. But here's the strangest thing, Cynthia. I was at a mall in Long Island, and I just kept saying to myself, I would really love to thank him someday. I would really love to thank Glenn, because he was just such a great big influence, because he had a heart of gold. He laughed with, his entire body when he laughed. When he was serious, he was serious. He was definitely a CEO. And guess who walks right in front of my car as I'm sitting there waiting for my wife to come out? Glenn. And I said, Glenn, and I ran up to him. I opened the door, and I happened to have a copy of my book, Liquid Leadership. And I said, hey, I wanted to let you know you were the greatest influence in my business career, and I want to thank you. And I signed that copy and gave it to him. And he goes, Brad, whoa, the joy in his faith. We have these influencers in our lives, and sometimes we have to just purposely, intentionally thank them, reach out to them.
I love that. And Ken Blanchard said, unexpressed good thoughts aren't worth squat. If you have a good thought, or you have something you want to share with someone, but you don't share it, it's not worth anything. But you could change a life. I'm sure he walked away thinking, wow, I did have an influence on, I didn't know that I affected this man, and what that did for him.
Yeah.
I've got a great quote in the book by Pablo Picasso, which is kind of the mission statement of the book, really, that says the meaning of life is to find your gift. The purpose of life is to give it away. And what a great challenge I'd like to issue all our listeners is find your own unique gift and give it away. Multiply yourself through you have more unique talents, more, especially as you start getting older. And I think we'll discuss this a little later, but you have so much to offer. I'm thinking about, you talked about the pinnacle of success, Brad. And if you think of somebody like Jimmy Carter, who reached what you would say would be the pinnacle of success in life, maybe the president of the United States. And he had a rough presidency. That was during the Iran hostages.
Yeah, I remember.
I do. I remember it vividly too. And he didn't get reelected. And the embarrassment of that, and the feel like a failure to go away from that. But yet Jimmy and Rosalind Carter are incredible people. They didn't see that as, okay, I've reached the pinnacle of success. I'm done. I'm going to just build a library, give really expensive speeches the rest of my life, and kick back in Plains, Georgia. I mean, what are they known for? What are the Carters known for?
They give back to the poor. They build houses. Right. They do all.
That's right. Habitat for Humanity. The next year, he started the Carter Center that dealt with peace, bringing peace negotiations about. Their most important work was truly ahead. So sometimes we reach, to bring it back to you saying how inspiring it would be to help somebody else. Sometimes we feel like we're successful. I've made a lot of money. I'm doing great in my career. But what's next? What are you going to sit on your laurels, go to Florida and relax and do nothing else? Or what great contributions are ahead of you, like the Carters? What can you bring about? They're in their late 90s. They're still involved in helping the poor. They still care. Their greatest work was truly ahead. He was not our greatest president, but he's known as the greatest post-president we've ever had because of the contributions he brought about in the last, 30, 40 years of his life.
So true. And guess which quote I had highlighted, ready to go? The Pablo Picasso quote. It just stopped me. I'm a graphic designer, so I've studied Picasso, but that quote was phenomenal. The meaning of life is to find your gift. The purpose of life is to give it away. I thought that was great. Hey, ladies and gentlemen, pick up a copy of Live Life in Crescendo. It's Stephen Covey's last book, and Cynthia really helped compile it. I love your story, by the way, of you kept trying to meet the deadlines, but you were raising kids and everything. And then finally your dad passed and you were like, you know what? I got to do this now. And this is how books get written. I don't know. I put off writing a book. I put off doing a podcast for years until I guess it feels like when the time is right, because this is birthing something and it's very intimate for you. Because of your dad. And you said in the book, this was very exciting. Your dad was so excited about this next book.
He felt so passionate about it and shared it with me. And I felt honored that he would trust me in basically, putting it together and the Live Life in Crescendo idea, because it was so important to him. But what a great, I had to live in Crescendo to finish the book. It took 10 years to do it because of I have 6 kids and a lot of grandkids, and I have some other involvements with writing and community and different things. And it took 10 years to write. I could feel my dad hanging over my shoulder saying, finish it already, get it out there, because this message, I think, is important. I think right now in our society, I think people are not taking responsibility for themselves, are blaming circumstances and blaming different things that are happening to them. And I can't do this because of what happened, my background, or I'm not capable, unless I get a lot of assistance, and he believes that you, like Ray Hinton, that you have a choice and that we all have choices that we need to make, and take responsibility for your life and just make it happen. Bring great things about on your own accord without, just things that you feel passionate about in your community. And everybody can make a difference. It doesn't have to be grandiose. You don't have to be extraordinary to do extraordinary things.
Right. It's powerful. Where can they go to get a hold of you if they need to, contact you at all?
I'm mostly on LinkedIn. I like to use LinkedIn, and I feel like this idea of Crescendo is so powerful. Our family, at the end of the book, you probably read it.
Yes,
our
Rachel.
Family's journey into Crescendo, and we had 3 things that happened that in a row. My mom, who was the Energizer Bunny and always organized everything and was an amazing mother and grandmother, had this back surgery that went wrong and left her in a wheelchair the last 10 years of her life. My father, this isn't known to many people, but about the same time developed front temporal dementia. And we talk about it in this book so that other people can see that, everybody struggles, everyone has challenges. And our family had to step up and help both of our parents and to keep living in Crescendo, to keep our family together and bring about the great things that they taught us our whole life. And then the last story, I'm just telling him real briefly, is my brother Sean lost his daughter Rachel, his oldest daughter of 8 children, to depression. And like you were talking about, Brad, about the comparison society we have for girls in the Instagram crazy world of looking good and everything turning out in their life and comparing yourself to others. And anyway, she lost her battle to depression. And Sean realized, someone came up to him and well-meaning, but said to him, Sean, you'll always have a hole in your heart because of the loss of Rachel. You just can't, that's how it is. You'll always have that big hole. And he thought about it and thought, no, that's not true. He said, I'm going to grow a muscle there. I'm going to fill that hole with something powerful. And he realized he basically had three choices with this life-changing setback that he had, this really difficult thing. He could either let Rachel's passing define them, destroy them, or strengthen them. And they chose the hard path to let it strengthen them, but ultimately one that increased their circle of influence and blessed others. He began a nonprofit called Bridle Up Hope, because Rachel loved horses. And she said she found her voice when she was riding horses. Yep. And unbeknownst to them, to the parents, she had helped other girls who were struggling with things on horseback rides. And so this foundation has three elements. It has equestrian training, and this is just for girls from 12 above. Equestrian training, where they learn a lot. There's a lot of healing with horses. The second component is they learn life skills to cope with life's ups and downs. And Sean wrote the book. My brother Sean wrote 7 Habits of Highly Effective Teens. He took my dad's book and made it for teenagers, teaching some life skills. And the third is service, giving back to others. Yeah. And it's been 10 years, and over 1,000 girls have gone through Bridle Up Hope. And 93% of the parents have said it's been life-changing for their daughter. And so talk about taking something that's the hardest challenge, the worst thing that could ever happen to you, losing a child, and making something powerful and wonderful out of it that will bless others and continue to live in crescendo. So that's our family's journey and struggle and challenge that we had. And I know every family has things like this, but how are you going to determine to react in crescendo or diminuendo? And that's the challenge I leave.
It's truly about living in your faith, your support of your family, and you don't push to move on. You mourn properly, and that really touched my heart. That last chapter in the book about Rachel, she literally goes, "I found my voice." She liked to do those 25-mile horse marathons,
long distance, right?
Yeah, long distance riding, and I was so impressed with how your brother stood up and his wife took that challenge on to change that. Have you ever listened to the podcast Teenage Therapy? It's a podcast that was put together by teenagers while they were going through these rough teen years, and they would just literally sit in their bedroom and talk about their issues. And I think a lot of young people today, they have a lot of resources at hand, but sometimes they need a little bit of adult guidance to just step into those things that can help.
Right.
Yeah. So my hat off to you, your brother. This is just an extraordinary conversation. You're kind of blowing my mind, because every note I took about what I wanted to talk about, you go right into. And I'm like, I was like, man, she's on the same wavelength as me with asking these questions.
Well, I don't know if you're interested in ending up talking about the retirement myths. You mentioned that.
Yes, I really do want to. Let's talk about those retirement myths, because I just turned 60. My classmates are all turning 60, from high school. And I feel like I'm just getting started on something new. And a lot of them are, waiting for that pension. And not that there's anything wrong with that. It's just okay, what are you going to do now? Right. Are you just going to, prepare for doing nothing? Or are you going to contribute or serve, as you say in the book, a service mindset?
Right. We call this the second half of life. And this is the whole reason the book was started, because it really bothered my dad, as I said, that people would plan his retirement and just you need to hang it up. And he's like, why?
Yeah, why?
Look around you. There's so many people in our society, that are contributing in their 70s, 80s, even 90s, because they have the will to do it. And he felt it was a false dichotomy that you had to choose between work and retirement. He said the third alternative is make a contribution. And so if you choose to decide to stay in your career, you feel like you're passionate. He talked about a judge when he was talking about this, who was close to retirement, who decided, when listening to him talk about contribution, he thought, I've just been thinking I'm automatically going to retire at 65. Why should I? I know my community. I feel like I'm doing well. I have more contributions to make. I still have many more years in me. And so you may choose to keep working into your 60s, 70s, 80s, 90s, whatever you feel. If you have a passion for it and you feel you want to make a contribution there, keep at it. Or if you feel like, okay, I'm finished with my career, I'm going to step away from that. But the third alternative is make a contribution. So what now are you going to contribute to? Okay, you're not a CEO anymore. You're not flying an airplane. Maybe your kids are married and you're a grandparent now. But what is your next great contribution going to be? Because if you don't have one, as you indicated before, you are slowly planning your death. If you have, my father, I just listened to 7 Habits. I like listening to it sometimes on the as I'm traveling, I can hear his voice and his passion. And he said, a lot of people, as they get older, they decrease their circle of influence. But your circle of influence should increase as you become older, because you have so many talents. You have a lifetime of experience. You have wisdom. You have networking. You have knowledge. You have so many resources in your 60s, 70s, 80s that you didn't have when you were younger. What are you going to do with it? It's the most exciting time of life, he believed. What contribution are you going to make with your unique skills and gifts to other people, rather than think, okay, I'm retired. They don't expect anything more of me. I'm going to shut down. And he felt like if people did that, they would soon die.
Ain't that the truth?
He talks about Dr. Selvig in his book about eustress and how everybody needs eustress, which is the healthy stress, not de-stress. There's de-stress, and it's a Greek word. Eustress is the helpful stress. And that is a reason to get up in the morning, a purpose, a cause, a mission that gets you out of bed. And we need eustress in your life. Dr. Selvig talked about retirement disease. If you don't have eustress, then you're prematurely old and you do die earlier.
It is true. I don't know if you're familiar with the Blue Zone studies, but they went around the world. And I talked to Dr. Wallach about this. Joel Wallach, he was part of that. And they looked at everything. They looked at nutrition, and they looked at where they were living, or the altitude, what was allowing these people to live way past 100. And one of the things they really found that was mind-blowing to them is each of these people woke up with a purpose, that passion that got them out of the bed in the morning. One woman talked about her great-grandchildren. She was passionate about getting up and helping them. Another guy was still teaching karate at 108 or 110 years of age. And he was in phenomenal shape. You're like, what? And I truly believe, your purpose, your passion, if you can ignite it, because men, a lot of times, we define ourselves by the work we do. What's happening when we're no longer working?
Right.
So we have to reinvent that.
Yeah.
I love it.
If you define yourself by your job and your profession, that ends, then where are you? So your roles and goals, you have a role as a family member, you have a role in your community, you have a role in your church, you have a role in your schools. What are your most important roles, and what goals can you set around those to keep contributing? You're talking about the Blue Zone. Dr. Frankl also said that the only way that they could see, he was a psychologist, and in the prison camps in Dachau, they couldn't figure out who would die and who would make it. And the only thing that they found, like you're saying, Brad, is that if they had a future, if they had a purpose or something that was out there that kept them alive, and genetics and their attitude and all these different things didn't matter compared to somebody that had something still significant to do. And one man had been working on scientific finding when he was imprisoned, and had made some great strides in some great scientific experiment that he wanted to share. And he knew his material, and he had a purpose to get home to finish that. And another man had a child he knew was waiting in another country, and that they had great things that they still had to do together in his relationship. And so they had a purpose, they had a future, and it kept him alive. And so especially as we get older, we need to examine, what is, find my why. We talked about find my why in the book, find my reason, despite different things that happen to us. The great philosopher Nietzsche, I can't see how you say the name, the Russian, said, Nietzsche. He who has a why to live can bear almost any how. And so those are circumstances and things that happen. If you have a why to still keep going, you can do it. Yeah. And that's the hope that I'm hoping this message of Living in Crescendo will bring to listeners and readers, that despite your past and despite failures, maybe stop looking in the rearview mirror, even despite successes, despite great things that have happened. What is ahead? Keep driving, looking forward, looking ahead at what you can bring about, because your most important work and most important contributions could still be ahead of you.
That's phenomenal. Cynthia Covey Haller, thank you so much for being on Awakened Nation. Hey, everybody, go out and pick up a copy of Live Life in Crescendo. Your most important work is always ahead of you. It's the last book of Stephen Covey. And Cynthia, you've done an extraordinary job with this book. We're now going to go into the lightning round of the show. And I'm going to ask you a few questions to get to know you better. We talk a lot about your dad and your memories and things like that, but I want to ask you, what's your favorite memory with your mom, Sandra Covey?
I think I'll share this one that I told. She was in Europe. She was in France with my father, and she really needed to use the restroom. And she walked into a restaurant and said to the woman, "Could I please use your restroom?" And she said, in her French way, "It is finished, madam. No, it is finished." And my mom said, "I really need to use the restroom. Could I please use it? I really am in desperate need." And she said, "Madam, it is finished." And my mom just looked her right in the eye and said, "It is not finished." And she went past her and went downstairs where she thought the bathroom would be, and was looking around for the bathroom. And the lady turned off the lights on her. So they're struggling in an unfamiliar place without cell phone lights in those days, trying to find the bathroom. So anyway, she found the bathroom, came upstairs, and walked up the stairs, met the woman's glare, and raised her arm and yelled, "Vive la France!" and walked out. And so the theme of "It is not finished" is a crescendo one. And the story that I tell about my mom founding the Covey Leadership Center, she was not finished, and she was not finished contributing to her great posterity. She was the matriarch of our family after my father passed. She was not finished in the community. She founded the Covey Center. She was not finished with life. She had a passion for concerts, for basketball and football games, for any events going on. And that kind of represented my mom when she said, "It is not finished," to that woman.
Vive la France. I love
Vive
that.
la France. So we said in the funeral, we said, "Vive la Sandra."
I love that story. Thank you so much for that one. That's good.
Mom was a fireball. She's amazing. She was the wind behind my dad's wings too. She believed in him. She believed in all of us so much. I have great memories of my mom just knocking herself out for her kids. There were 9 of us. And as you can imagine, I was 21 when my little brother Joshua was born. So you can imagine she had 5 schools all at different times. And she made every one of us feel like we were an only child. I don't know how she did that, because I just remember her being exhausted by the end of the day. But she also lived in Crescendo so much. We lived in a smaller town near a large city in Utah, and they didn't have an art center in that town, and they'd have to travel to Salt Lake City an hour away to get ballet and opera and different things, cultural events. And she made it her mission, and she didn't do it until she was in her 70s. It finally came about to found this art center. It's called the Covey Center for the Arts. And she was not finished with her contributions, even though she was, in a wheelchair and right before this happened and before her surgery, she was not doing well with her back and things. And she brought about this amazing art center that is booked almost every day of the year now in Provo, and that serves that entire community. And that's just a representative of the passion she put into our family raising us, which took decades. And then she turned to the community and was not finished and still contributed Life In Crescendo to bring about the art center.
There's a great picture of you, your mom and dad in front of the Covey Art Center, and the smiles on their face are just intoxicating. They just are like filled with joy. It's great.
Yeah.
You have that classic Covey smile, right?
I hope so.
Yeah. My next question I really wanted to ask you was, how much would you say, when you've gone through your own dark night of soul, or your own part where your life is disrupted, how much did your faith play a part in getting through that?
Huge part. Our faith is the most important thing to us in our family. Our faith and family are the most important things. And you asked me earlier about my own personal mission statement. It is personal, but I'll share it because it has to do with my faith. And it is just simply, I'm trying to be like Jesus. That's my stone. That's my religion. And my faith is crucial to my success. And I rely on our faith. Our faith got us through. Our faith and family pulled us through those 3 hard things that we endured. And my father was always a very religious and spiritual man. He believed that things were for a purpose. He believed in God, and he was not ashamed of that. And he believed that that throughout all of society, through other religions, through Hinduism, and he'd travel to the Middle East and he'd travel in Asia, and they would all say to him, "Oh, you spoke about our principles in the Quran or in our sacred books." And it's because he said, these are true principles that are universal, powerful true principles that are universal to all people throughout all cultures and throughout all religions. And so he believed that you have to have integrity by being true to true principles, even though the world teaches, you can't be the good guy. You can't, you got to watch your back, and you've got to maybe cheat a little, or be a little dishonest. And he thought that was duplicitous, and he would said in the long run it would get you every time. That integrity was paramount. And so faith is a very strong part of our foundation. Thanks for asking that.
I completely agree with you, because someone asked me, they shocked me a year ago. They said, "Do you believe in God?" And I said, "What? I wouldn't be able to accomplish any of the things I've accomplished because I wasn't born with the silver spoon in my mouth. I wouldn't have been able to accomplish any of these things without God, my faith. It just, if I didn't have those, where would I be? I really, truly believe that. So I want to thank you. I wanted to ask your brother that when he was on the show, because I could just, getting through those tough times, you need faith. You really do.
Yeah, he talks about trust, my brother Stephen, the speed of trust and trust and inspire. Trust is a true principle that is universal throughout the world. Yeah. It's a principle that will always be there, and it's part of our faith as well. And he's God-fearing as well.
I love that. My last question for you: what are you passionate about?
Well, I'm passionate about my faith. I'm passionate about my family. I have 6 children. If you can believe it, I have 23 grandkids. Our youngest son and his wife just had twin daughters, and they're such a joy. We've never had twins in our family, so this is amazing. In the whole Covey family, these are the first ones. I'm passionate about making a difference in people's lives through small things like you were talking about. Through a kind word, through thinking of someone that's going through a hard time, and sending them a message, doing something for them, praying for them, determining where I can help in my family, in a relationship, mending a relationship, seeing my children and grandchildren and their needs, being a good friend, being a community member, caring about, the food bank and about the state of our city and about the homeless situation and all the problems that we encounter. I can't do everything, but I can do something. As a great Pamela Atkinson is a big homeless advocate in our community. And she said she was giving a talk about making a difference and helping others. And an older lady raised her hand and said, I don't believe this. I'm in my 70s. I am on a fixed income. I don't get out much. I don't have money. How can I possibly make a difference? And she looked at her and said, could you donate 1 can of soup a week? And she said, yes. And she said, imagine a single mother warming up that can of soup for her hungry children until they wouldn't have to go to bed hungry. Do you think that would make a difference to that family? And she said, yes, I do. And she said, and so for the next several years, she donated 1 can of soup every week, which ultimately resulted in hundreds of meals. So something small we can do. We can't solve all the problems in the world, but we can start where we are. I like what Roosevelt said, do what you can with what you have where you are. Yeah. So look around you. And I feel like I'm trying to do that. That's one of my goals, and part of my mission is to do what I can where I am when I have the opportunity. And I keep trying to do that. I fail. Sometimes I don't listen. Sometimes I don't follow through. But that's my intent, is to keep contributing, because contribution is blesses others' lives.
Adam Grant said it best. He said, this wonderful last gift from Stephen Covey, made with his daughter, Cynthia, will inspire you to dream bigger and bolder. And folks, pick up a copy of this. It's the 8th principle.
It actually have to be the 9th, Brad. There is an 8th.
Oh, yeah. I remember there is an 8th. Sorry.
In fact, Adam wrote back when I asked him to endorse the book from my dad. He wrote back and said, should we call it the 8th habit? And I said, Brad, sorry, you must have missed that one. The 8th habit has already been out there. And he said, the 9th?
The 9th. This is the 9th.
No, I call it capstone habit of the 7 habits. Capstone.
Yeah, it really is not only a homage to your father, his work, but also a great platform for you to really get a chance to relive some of your father's greatness. And your father, this is what I love about your father. Everybody sees this on stage, Stephen Covey, a great man on stage. But it's in the little things off stage that made him really great. And that's truly what I admire about hearing these stories about your father. So thank you. Thank you for being on Awakened Nation today, Cynthia.
Thanks so much for having me, Brett. I really had a great time. I appreciate it talking to you.
Good. Hey, everybody, tune in next week and we'll have another extraordinary guest here on Awakened Nation. Bye-bye for now.
Thank you so much for being a big part of the Awakened Nation movement. This is how you can help me and our extraordinary guests. If you guys enjoyed this episode, please share it out on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. And let's grow this movement by word of mouth. Our success will be because of you. Thank you, and see you next week.